presentations. It is my pleasure to introduce you to a number of organizations who are partners in the innovation space here in Ontario. Each is either a department or an agency of the province or the federal government, or they receive funding from the government. Together, they offer innovators and entrepreneurs a variety of programs, opportunities, and advice to help them develop their research and businesses. Our first presentation this morning will be from the Ontario Capital Growth Corporation, and our presenter is Brenda Hogan. Brenda is an investment and portfolio manager at the OCGC. OCGC manages the interests of the Government of Ontario in the $205 million Ontario Venture Capital Fund, and manages and operates the Ontario Emerging Technologies Fund, the OETF. The OETF is a $250 million fund that co-invests in innovative, high-growth private Ontario companies. If you have any questions, there should be an opportunity at the end of the presentation to ask a few questions. Please welcome Brenda Hogan.
Thank you. So thanks for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Hogan, Investment and Portfolio Manager with the Ontario Capital Growth Corporation, which is an agency of the Government of Ontario. So I'm glad to have been invited here today to be part of this dynamic OCE Discovery Conference to provide you with an overview of the Ontario Emerging Technologies Fund, also known as OETF. So we'll talk about the intent of the fund, the type of investments we do, the sorts of investors with whom we co-invest, and the general parameters of the fund. So I've often said that companies and investment opportunities can be a bit like snowflakes. No two are completely identical. And so that reason, following this presentation, I will be around outside if you have specific questions, and I'd be glad to connect with you then on that. So just to get a sense of who's in the audience, are most of you companies who are looking for financing? Yeah, okay. And the others are investors or people curious? Okay, so a bit of a mix. So that's nice to see. So in the spring of 2009, the Government of Ontario launched or announced a $250 million co-investment fund for the province's emerging technology companies with the goal of rapidly deploying much-needed capital into Ontario-based privately held companies to ensure their future success in Ontario and to help them grow and compete globally. The Ontario Capital Growth Corporation, the Ontario Capital Growth Corporation, or OCGC, is the agency responsible for managing and holding Ontario's interest in the OETF. The OETF mandate is really to invest in sectors that have been deemed to be of particular strategic importance to Ontario, namely clean technology, life sciences, advanced health technologies, digital media, and ICT, or information communications technologies. So how does the fund work? Well, essentially, the fund is based on the principle that we will follow the lead of the qualified investor who has identified and evaluated, for example, undertaken due diligence of an investment opportunity. So in other words, OETF doesn't invest in a company on our own, but we do so as part of a syndicate, which brings us to the question, well, what is a qualified investor? Well, a qualified investor could be, for example, a venture capital fund, an angel investor, a corporate investor. For example, GM, Bosch, Intel, they all have corporate investment arms. Who submits an investment opportunity to us for consideration. Now, investors, they need to come to us to become a qualified or approved investor. And then what happens is we review them against a set of criteria that evaluate their past performance. So what we're really looking at is, have they invested before? Have they had exits before? Do they know the space? Have they had experience operating? What's their track record, among other things. And the reason we're doing that goes back to the principle that we're really a passive investor, so we need to make sure that that other party has that requisite background and experience. So presuming that the investment opportunity meets the fund's eligibility criteria, then we may make a direct co-investment alongside that qualified investor into the particular company. So like any investment fund, the OCGC, we reserve the right to take a pass and use our discretion on, even if all the investment criteria happen to be satisfied. And as I mentioned earlier, OETF really co-invests alongside private sector investors. So that being the case, it's really that lead investor, the qualified investor, be it an angel fund or a VC or a corporate investor who approaches us with the opportunity and has done the sourcing, the assessing, and the negotiation of the opportunity, all based on market principles. So in other words, we're not a deal hunter. We don't go driving around in our car talking to customers and suppliers and what have you. We're really relying upon the expertise of the private sector investors. So another way to look at this is that OETF is really here to help close a financing round that otherwise may have difficulty closing. So just to keep the math easy, let's say your company's looking for $15, and let's say you found, a particular fund that's prepared to put in 7, and another fund's prepared to put in 6. Well, that still leaves a gap of $2. So in that sort of extreme example, we would look at coming in to close off on that too. And we also mirror the market, and then when we make an initial investment, we reserve capital for follow-on. So we know that early-stage companies, they will likely require multiple rounds of financing before some sort of an exit. Now, with digital media companies, the runway to an exit is quite different than if we're talking a life sciences company or a clean tech company. Then in terms of structure, OETF holds a minority interest in the company, and the form of investment is equity or quasi-equity. So basically, our interests are quite aligned with the other investors in the syndicate. And so when we go into an investment, we don't expect to be on better terms than the other investors, but we certainly don't want to be on worse terms, because the whole point is that the fund's meant to be evergreen, so that of the investments we make, some of them will be home runs, and then we'll plow that money back into the fund to invest in even more companies in Ontario. So now let's spend a little bit of time looking at what an eligible investment is. So as I alluded to, the fund's designed to invest in opportunities that will contribute to the growth of Ontario companies. And we've established eligibility criteria for the investments that we'll consider. And in particular, the fund targets companies at a specific stage of growth. So for example, a more mature company, they would be at a state where they'd be generating cash flow. They would look at probably more traditional bank financing. So we don't really play in that space. It tends to be the earlier companies we get involved in. And again, we're looking at clean tech, ICT, digital media, life sciences, and advanced health technologies. And those companies need to maintain what we call an Ontario footprint. And as a provincially sponsored fund, the matter of an Ontario footprint is an important attribute, so I'd like to highlight that in some detail. So essentially, in order to meet this provision, the company needs to be privately held. It must pay 50% of its wages, salaries, and fees to employees and contractors in Ontario. The majority of the company's full-time employees must be living in Ontario, and the majority of the C-suite need to be in Ontario. Now, again, we've had companies where, for example, the CTO was in Texas, but that's just because that's where we need to be. We've had companies where some of the salespeople were out in Silicon Valley, but again, from a business perspective, that's where it makes sense. But again, the majority of the activity was happening here. So now let's look at the parameters around how much OETF will invest in a particular company. There are really 4 elements I'd like to highlight today. Firstly, the total amount of the investment that we'll put in on a given round initially will be $5 million. Secondly, over the life of the fund, the aggregate that we'll put into any one company maxes out at $25 million, which sort of makes sense when you think about it. If we have $250 million to invest, we sort of have to allocate that amongst companies. And thirdly, our investment in a financing round or investee company will not be more than what the qualified investor is putting in. Again, following the concept that we're following, not leading the round. And finally, we would not be the largest investor in a company, again, as we're meant to be a catalyst in the round, but not a driver of the round per se. And we're not here to push other investors out. So, for example, if you have an investor who's prepared to put $1 million in your company, we're not going to tell them to put $800,000 so we can put $2. We're there more to complement those gaps as opposed to push an investor out. And like any fund, we do have limits, though, on how much we can invest. So let's look at that in terms of some of the features. So to describe these features, we will consider financing rounds that are in the order of $1 million to $15 million. We are looking at a company, if it's a new investment, then let's suppose a round is between 1 and 4 million, then we need at least one qualified investor coming to the table. If it's around between 4 and 15 million, then we would need the one qualified investor plus a second investor putting in at least 20, we call it a meaningful amount, but we call it a meaningful amount. And it's usually around 20%. And the reason being is we want a second party coming in there to help validate that initial investment. So if someone has already put money in the company, they're often predisposed to invest again on a follow-on round. So we want that second investor coming in to help us validate that. And then if we're looking at what we call portfolio investment, And then again, we would need at least 2 investors, 1 qualified investor and a second investor putting in a meaningful amount. Okay. Now, as a co-investor, OETF is by design really looking to follow the lead of the private sector market. So in terms of what you can expect of OETF, we'll follow the investment decisions of that qualified investor. We're not here looking to pick the winners and the losers per se, although if we could pick all the winners, that's certainly what we would do. But we're really looking at the track record of that qualified investor. You know, the private sector investor who's been there and who's done that, who's had some good exits, has had some good returns, has added value to a particular company. We don't lead the deal structures or the deals. We're really here, again, to help close around. So when an investor approaches us, by that point, they will have done all the due diligence. They've talked to your customers. They've talked to your suppliers. They've met with management. They've assessed management. You know, they've looked at the market. And at that point, they will have drafted up at least an initial term sheet. And so the idea being is that we would look at coming on the same terms that they've negotiated, because presumably they're not going to negotiate terms that are not favorable to them. So all things equal, so long as our position is not prejudiced, we would look to follow along as opposed to recreating the wheel. In terms of board participation, we wouldn't take a board seat. However, we would take observer rights on the board. And the reason we do that is because, of course, we've made an investment in the company. We want to have access to the information so that we can monitor the progress the investment's making. So we will look at, you know, have access to the board minutes, the financial statements, the business plan, what have you. But the difference with us being a passive investors and some of the more active investors is that we're not going to get involved in the company from an operational perspective. So we're not going to debate who the right CEO is, or which product you should be working on next, or which market you should be selling into next. That's really what you and your board would be looking at. As far as shareholder rights, typically we would be expecting the terms that the other investors in the round are getting, so we're all sort of on equal footing. And one of the benefits of that is that the interests are aligned amongst the shareholders, because we all are going in on the same terms and conditions, and we all have the same rights. So when it comes time to vote on a matter, we will vote just like any other shareholder. Typically speaking, we would look to see how that lead investor, the qualified investor, is voting and go along with them on that. And we talked a bit about monitoring. And again, we will have an observer on the board, but that will be the extent of it. And in terms of what happens after we make the investment, we typically would follow on with that lead. So, for example, when that lead says, look, there's an opportunity to exit via an acquisition, some sort of a transaction, then we would look to exit with them. We're not going to say, no, let's wait till next year when the valuation is different. We would follow along with them. So since launch, this is interesting. This moves ahead on its own. This is a special feature, I guess. So since launching, we've seen an active pipeline of investors from Ontario, Canada, the U.S., and overseas. We've got a steady flow of deal flow in terms of potential transactions. And as for successes to date, you may wonder, what have we been doing in the last couple of years? Well, we've made investments in 26 companies here in Ontario. We have more pending. We have another one closing next week, another one that's in legals that will close by the end of June. These closed and pending investments represent, actually that's about $60 million now that we've invested to date, and that doesn't account for the follow-on money that we usually put aside for the follow-ons, because typically what happens is for every dollar we put in, we notionally set aside 3 for follow-on. And we have a strong pipeline of investment opportunities coming forward. So as I close here, to sum up, those were some of the companies we've invested in over the past couple of years. So Sidence, Exogenic, Neuraxon. So it's a bit of a sprinkling between ICT, digital media, clean tech, and life sciences, which is a nice mix. And then here are some of the investors that we've qualified. If you are dealing with a fund that's not there, it doesn't mean we won't deal with them. It just means they may not have approached us yet. And angel investors, because they prefer to remain anonymous, sometimes we simply don't disclose their names. But if the company wants to, they're certainly welcome to. So in closing, we're really here to respond to the challenges of emerging technology companies and raising venture capital. We're here to co-invest alongside private sector investors who make market-driven investment decisions, and to co-invest directly into companies with a corporate footprint in Ontario. We're also here to target market opportunities in clean tech, life sciences, digital media, and information technology companies, and be self-sustaining through a return on investment. So this has been a high-level overview of the attributes of the OETF. I will be available, as I mentioned, following the presentation if you'd like to discuss specific situations you may be looking at. And on that note, enjoy the remainder of the conference.
Good morning again. For those of you who just joined us, my name is Narinder Hall. I'm the Vice President of Finance and Administration for the Ontario Centres of Excellence. Our next presentation is from the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. Our presenter is Luke Gartner, Manager Technology Programs in the Commercialization branch of the Ministry. The Ontario Innovation Demonstration Fund supports pilot demonstrations that will lead to the commercialization of a process and or a product in Ontario that are globally competitive, innovative, green technologies. If you have any questions, there should be an opportunity at the end to ask a few questions at the end of the presentation. Please welcome Luke Gartner.
Good morning. Just make sure. Okay. It's going to be a trick show today, I think. So just to be clear, I'm from the part of the ministry. It used to be called Ministry of Research and Innovation up until about October. Recently merged with Economic Development and Trade. So the Innovation Demonstration Fund was launched in August 2006 with the mandate of supporting pilot scale technology demonstrations, primarily in the clean tech space, so alternative energy, environmental technologies, hydrogen. And the goal is to commercialize new technologies in Ontario. The premise of the mandate of the program essentially is to fund pilot scale technology. So that's somewhere after R&D, the lab work, that kind of stuff, but before commercial activity. And it was found that in this space, there's quite a funding gap. You know, there's a lot of government programs in the earlier space, not a lot of, clearly not any bank interest because of the high technical hurdles and financial hurdles in this space. So the IDF will support up to 50% of a project. Our minimum contribution would be $100,000 all the way up to $4 million. Typically, this would be in the form of a forgivable loan, although there's several options available to us. In terms of eligible costs, we're fairly flexible. We will consider things eligible that, i.e. the company pays for, so cash costs, so not third parties, not a in-kind contribution from another partner, but the company's actual costs, and pretty much anything, almost anything directly related to the project. We wouldn't pay for land, we wouldn't pay for business case development, market activities, but as long as it's related to pilot project. So since the program's been launched, we've committed about $73 million to 35 projects, which will contribute to about $270 million of investment in the province. And if all these projects are successful, it'll create, we think it'll create about 3,600 jobs. So graphically, this is a chart someone came up with to illustrate what was referred to as the valley of death for technology at some point. Now, the IDF is in that space, as well as SDTC, earlier stage government programs, more traditional things, you know, Ontario Research Fund, NRC, that fund earlier stage development, but there wasn't a lot in this quasi-commercial space. And typically it's before a lot of other investors and lenders would normally participate in this kind of space. And I can tell from a lot of our clients, funding is still a major issue. So basically, we do under this program we undertake about five different reviews, not including just simple inquiries into the program. The first is a preliminary review. So essentially, if a proposal comes in, whether they've contacted us previously or the proposal just lands on our desk, we undertake a preliminary review. So we evaluate the proposal, check it for completeness, fit with the program, check missing information, things. Very few proposals actually come in with the same level of understanding as the writer would have, as the writer intends. I mean, that's just that's a fact of life. So what we try to do is provide the applicant with as much information at that early stage, as much information as we can in terms of helping them complete the proposal, add in additional information, and sometimes it's just not fit with the program for whatever reason. Once a proposal is deemed to be a complete proposal, it enters the more formal review process. The first is, I guess it's the interministerial review and the technical review happen at the same time. Interministerial review, the proposal gets reviewed by now it's 6 different ministries, but 7 different groups. So Ministry of Environment, Energy, OMAFRA, Northern Development Mines, MNR, and there's 2 from EDI, Economic Development Innovation now. We also have external technical review, which evaluates the third-party technical reviewer. Bloom is our main consultant on this, and evaluate more on the technical side. If both of these are positive, it goes to financial due diligence. So this is where one of our third-party providers, either Deloitte or H. Sudan and Company, will go in, will review the proposal with the applicant, go through the finances, the sources of financing, financial statements. It's just fairly in-depth review. Plus usually a little more information on the market. So all this information from these 3 reviews is compiled and presented to a committee of assistant deputy ministers. They go through and either raise concerns or agree with the recommendations that were put in front of them, and they make the final recommendation to the minister. Once the minister approves a decision, our offer process is basically a 2-stage process: a letter of offer followed by a loan agreement. And as I said, it's typically a forgivable loan, although there are some exceptions to that. We do it in this manner. Basically, a letter of offer is like a term sheet, anywhere from 6 to a dozen pages, basically the main points of the deal. I find it helps keep focus on the more material aspects. And the loan agreement is much longer. It's 80 pages, quite painful process because lawyers are involved. Hopefully there's no lawyers here. And that the time period for that, sometimes they're a few weeks, sometimes they're much longer because, we have lawyers involved. So that ends up in the firm offer to the company. Now, typically, as I mentioned before, with funding sources, in addition to like a lot of small companies, and most of our clients are SMEs, more towards the S, I'd say. And so, in addition to management risk and technology risk, financing is often an issue. So quite often our loan agreements our letters of offer are conditional on the company completing financing. So actually, our offer of support to a company can often lead to them securing. They may have an investor on board, but they haven't quite finalized. It's subject to completing their funding raise. So our funding has actually helped some companies complete their equity raise or whatever their financing happens to be. I should note that while they are forgivable loans, they are secured, which often that's often a trickier thing to complete because earlier stage companies Security is it's difficult to obtain, because they simply don't have the assets to. So we have to get creative sometimes. Okay, so let's talk about some of the evaluation criteria because, essentially it's a simple program, simple project, pilot scale, green technologies. So evaluation criteria, state of development of the technology. Essentially we're looking for something after proof of concept, but it's not quite commercial activity. We would expect a stronger proposal to have enough validation at the lab scale or bench scale to prove that the concept works, that the technology works. But it's not. We're not paying for startup manufacturing. We're not paying for something that's essentially ready to go to market, and you just need the first commercial line essentially. Uniqueness or the globally competitive advantage. Again, we're looking for things that are out of the ordinary. It's not routine engineering. It might be a relatively relatively unique. Technology. IP strategy. This again gets a little tricky because some companies don't. Preferably, we want a company to have a strong IP position. There's many routes to. There's many routes to strong IP. We don't mandate that you own a patent because patents aren't applicable to everything. Sometimes there's licensing arrangements. If a licensing arrangement is in place, then it has to be fairly strong. It's not a matter of, you happen to be the Ontario distributor for a foreign company. Organizational capacity. Okay. So organizational capacity, we evaluate who's in the company. Are there sufficient not only technical people but also managerial people? Because again, we're not quite in the NRC kind of space where we're just just looking at scientists and engineers, and we're not funding commercially operating companies. So there has to be a pretty good mix of both. Financial capacity, that's, again, we would, preferably a proposal should come in with all the financing lined up. It doesn't always happen. Usually it's tentatively lined up, but financial capacity, if the company has any operating history, what we like to look at is 3 years of past financial statements. It's not always there, so kind of have to make do at times. Pilot and, they're really quick. Pilot and commercialization plans. Essentially, and actually all this is on our website, so if this keeps flicking off, you can find it on our website. We have a business plan guide up on the website, which spells out everything that we would like from companies. Essentially, we ask for 2 plans, a pilot plan and a commercialization plan. The pilot plan is essentially what the IDF is helping to support. So, moving from the lab bench to commercial scale, what is the pilot plan? We evaluate on, are all the necessary activities covered off or risk mitigated, comprehensive plan. And commercialization plan is what's going to happen after the project's ended. Typically, our agreements last for 3 years after the pilot project is over, and that's kind of evolved over the years. And essentially, that 3-year period is for the company to demonstrate that commercialization is happening in Ontario. And again, it's different for every company, so we try to specify that in the loan agreement. Okay, technical challenge. Again, we don't fund routine engineering. We're looking for that the company has a genuine technical hurdle in their pilot plan. Project risk, it's generally like all the non-technical things that can go wrong at this stage, and there's many. So we just look for, a comprehensive understanding of where the company knows where they're at, what their hurdles are, what they have to accomplish. Market potential, obviously, if the project's completed successfully, is there going to be a value proposition for the end customer or user? The market and follow-on potential. Essentially, is the project aimed at a growing market? Is it something that, what's the potential not of the product but of the market itself? Is this something that's growing, a growing need? And potential for follow-on investment. Essentially, we're looking for a projects that will generate sufficient returns that the company will be able to grow in Ontario. And the potential economic and environmental benefits. Essentially, that's, what's a payback for Ontario? If these projects are implemented, what are going to be the environmental benefits? And how many jobs are going to be created? How many, what kind of follow-on, is there a chance for cluster development? Apparently I'm running out of time, so I was going to quickly go through a few of the projects, but I understand all these presentations will be posted, so you can look that up. Glasgow Energy is one of our classic examples that I use in discussions with people. So the first one approved under the program. And a classic example of going from a pilot scale to commercial scale. They embarked on about a $30 million project to bring something that, it's a waste gasification, it's a waste energy project. So they had something that was working in a small box. They moved to an 80-ton per day unit, and then commercial size will be, around twice that size. So that's a good illustration of what we look at for pilot scale projects. Any questions? Yeah, it's been it's kind of awkward question to answer, so thanks. But no, it's been we've had some hiccups recently, like after election between the ministry merger, deputy shuffle transition, whether or not a budget was going to get passed. We've been accepting applications, so we've been basically stuck at that preliminary stage for quite a while now. We're hoping that it will get a decision on moving it forward very soon. I've been told very soon for a couple months now. So, we have a lot of good projects that we're waiting to get forward, but we have a few constraints right now. But it will be soon. Yeah, good question. Notwithstanding what's happened the past few months, our target is 60 days. Yeah, and until recently, we've been pretty good at keeping that. Until recently. Yeah. We accept applications at any time, so these ones that are in the backlog, they won't prevent other ones from proceeding if new applicants come in. Yes. With the caveat that, we get our answer soon. But, yeah. And the contact's all on the website, so if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. We review slide decks, whatever you have. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Brenda Hall. I am the Vice President of Finance Administration at the Ontario Centres of Excellence. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our next Innovation Partner presentation from the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. Here to present today is Lee Marsden. Lee is a Senior Policy Advisor with the Access to Capital and Business Development branch of the Ministry. The Ontario government provides funds for a number of international research collaboration programs. These programs support innovative, globally significant research of strategic value with the intention of generating positive economic, technological, scientific, and social impacts for Ontario-based researchers, institutions, and businesses. If you have any questions, there should be some time at the end to ask those. Please welcome Lee Marsden.
Good morning. Okay, just getting set up here. Okay. So, as I was introduced, my name is Lee Marsden with the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. International research collaborations. I'll just give you a bit of an overview of the type of ways in which we support these collaborations. We essentially have three main ways in which we do this. We have joint research agreements, which we develop with foreign jurisdictions, such as Memoranda of Understanding. We have incoming delegations, which we host to exchange best practices with the incoming delegates, and also to provide some partnership matchmaking opportunities if it warrants. And also, we participate in major international conferences, such as the Bio International Conference that happens in the United States every year, Clean Tech Forum. We occasionally have ministry-led international missions. We had a Singapore water mission in 2011 that was led by our minister. We've also had biotech missions in the past as well to Asia. So those are the three main tools in our toolbox for helping to promote international collaborations. These initiatives tend to support innovative, globally significant research of strategic value, both to Ontario and our international partners. From Ontario's perspective, these initiatives help to generate positive economic, technological, scientific, and social impacts for Ontario. They help us to attract and retain top international research talent in Ontario, to enhance Ontario's profile in the international research community, and then also to generate new intellectual property, patents, licenses for Ontario-based researchers, institutions, and businesses. The following table provides a high-level overview of some of our existing collaborative agreements that we currently have in place with China, India, and Israel. I'll be going over each of these programs more in depth later on in the presentation, but this chart does provide a good overall comparison. Our China agreement, the ministry has allocated $5 million with China matching that, so it's a joint $10 million program. The areas of focus, bioeconomy and clean technologies, advanced health technologies, pharmaceutical research and manufacturing, digital media and information and communication technologies, and agriculture and food testing. India, we have a $3 million program, so $3 million from Ontario, $3 million from India. Again, many of the same areas of focus. And our Israeli program was initially in 2005, it started. We had $3 million that was matched by Israel. In 2010, we allocated another $3 million with the Israeli government matching. And again, many of the same areas of focus. These areas of focus have been identified within the Ontario Innovation Agenda as the areas of strategic strength for Ontario that we want to advance. So moving along. Our international research collaborations essentially support two types of collaborative activities: partnership development activities and collaborative research and development projects. The partnership development activities essentially act almost as a feeder system in order to develop the collaborative research projects. They consist of things such as workshops, symposia, roundtables, scientific seminars, and technology or business matchmaking events. They promote Ontario's research expertise, both to key domestic and international stakeholders. As I said, they generate interest in upcoming calls for proposals for our collaborative R&D projects. They provide a venue to have in-depth discussion and learn about relevant focus areas. And they provide a networking opportunity as well. Whereas our collaborative R&D projects, They are aimed at identifying specific planned research projects aimed to discover new knowledge with the objective that such knowledge may be useful in developing new products, processes, or services. Projects are evaluated by a peer in all of our 3 programs by a peer review process and are evaluated based on scientific merit and the potential for commercialization. Going into specifics, our Ontario-India agreement, as I said, it's $3 million from Ontario, 3 from the Department of Science and Technology in India. The maximum grant available per project for our R&D projects is $300,000. And in these cases, both research institutions and private sector firms can apply for this funding. That's not the case for all of our programs. The program's relatively new. We had our first call for proposal in November 2010 in clean technology, bioeconomy, and also digital media ICT as the areas of focus. And then we issued a new call for proposal last year in biotechnology. And we've just recently evaluated the projects, and we expect to have an announcement in June on the successful projects that we have from those 2 calls. A couple of examples of the partnership development activities, just to provide some context of the things that we've done in the past. We had a trilateral roundtable on water technology between Ontario, India, and Israel in February 2011 that provided an opportunity for stakeholders from all 3 regions, experts from Ontario, India, and Israel, to get together and identify potential areas for collaboration in water and wastewater technologies. And then we also participated in the India show, which is a conference that was held here in Toronto in November of last year, and it was a showcase opportunity for mostly for the government of India, but we were able to participate and have a matchmaking opportunity for businesses there. So that's overall, in a nutshell, our India agreement. Our Israel MOU, as I had mentioned previously, we have a MOU that was signed in 2005 with Israel to support collaborative R&D projects and partnership development activities. Our partner ministry, I guess you could say, is the Office of the Chief Scientist in Israel. In 2010, during Premier McGuinty's visit to Israel, he allocated a further $3 million to the program. To date, we have had 7 R&D projects that we've funded under this program, and we have issued a new call for proposal in June of last year. The maximum amount of funding per project, again, is $300,000, and this would be open to both Ontario research institutions and private sector businesses. The next call for proposal, we haven't nailed down the date yet, but we expect it to happen sometime over the summer, so stay tuned. I should also say, just going back to the India program, the India program is managed on behalf of the ministry by the organization called ISTP Canada, or International Science and Technology Partnerships Canada. So they help to implement the program, issue the call for proposals on our behalf. Their sister organization, CERDIF, Canada Israel Industrial Research and Development Foundation, they manage our Israel program on our behalf. So we work closely with them in developing both calls for proposal for the R&D projects, and then also for developing partnership development activities. Our last program to talk about is the Ontario-China MOU. This program came out of a MOU that was signed in 2008 between Ontario and the People's Republic of China, specifically the Ministry of Science and Technology in China. For this program, we have allocated $5 million with China matching. We have had a call for proposal in May 2011. These projects, they have a little bit less funding on a per project basis. We're up to $250,000 per project with, I should say as well, that's the Ontario portion of funding. The Chinese partner will match. And in the case of both Israel and India as well, the 300 that I'd referred to was the Ontario component. There is a additional component that would be provided by the other international partners. In the case of the China agreement, the China program, the research institutions must be the lead applicant. We can have private sector firms participate, but they can't be the lead applicant. That's just a small nuanced difference from the India and Israel programs. The first call, as I had mentioned, was in March 2011, and it focused on water and water-related technologies and also on neuroscience. We have selected the first round of projects under this call in March 2012. And just a couple weeks ago, we've launched the second call for proposal for our program with China, with a deadline at the end of this month. We've expanded the areas of focus for this call to also include stem cells and then hydrogen fuel cells. To give you an example of one of the partnership development activities we have done with China, we have recently hosted a Ontario-China technology transfer workshop to provide some exchange of information and best practices from both the Chinese side and then also Ontario. There's often a number of questions that come up at these things in terms of things like, how do I deal with intellectual property? Generally speaking, with all three of our programs, we ask that the two applicants, the Ontario partner and then the international partner that they're going to be working with, that they come to an agreement on their own prior to applying on intellectual property. It's easier for us, and then it ensures that there's no surprises down the line, so that they essentially have to work it out before they apply. So that is a quick and dirty overview of our three programs. I have some time available to answer questions at this time, if anybody has any. And my contact information is also up on the screen. If you don't have any questions right now, or you're shy, you want to email me later, that's fine as well. Yes? Yeah, the question, I don't know if everybody could hear, was regarding the partnership development activities, if that's an RFP process. Essentially, as what we've been doing to date is we've been coming up with the ideas ourselves for with our implementation agencies in the case of CERTIF and ISTP Canada, to identify areas of interest for the government. There has been some inquiry from the private sector or from our research institutions. They say they have got a great idea. So we are starting to entertain those, but to date it's been more of a government-led initiative. But like I say, we recognize that our partners do have some great ideas when it comes to collaborative activities. We just want to make sure that if we do have a partnership development activity, that it's a little bit more broad than just one business going to meet with another business. It's going to have application to maybe a greater audience than just a one-on-one. Any other questions? Great. Well, that's everything then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our next Innovation Partners presentation from the Ontario Centres of Excellence, or OCE as we know it. Here to present is Bob Civak. Bob is Senior Vice President of Business Development Operations at OCE. OCE, in partnership with industry and academia, co-invests to commercialize innovation originating in the province's colleges, universities, and research hospitals. It is responsible for the industry academic collaboration program, along with many other programs and initiatives. If you have any questions, there'll be some time at the end to ask those. Please welcome Bob Civak.
Thanks, and good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's enjoying the show so far. There's a lot going on, and it's my pleasure to take you through a 15-minute romp of OCE, what it is we do, and kind of put some of this into context for you all. So here we go. This is going to go if I push it, right? Yeah. Oh, I can see over there. Excellent. One slide for a history lesson. A lot of people don't know, but OCE goes way, way back to 1987. It was created originally 7 centers. OCE has a history of being set up sectorally. So, you know, it was multiple centers done by sectors with strategic investments at our academic institutions with an original mandate to bring industry relevance to academe. Isn't that something? I'll tell you, I've seen a incredible evolution, and now we've moved full bore into collaborative situations and beyond collaborative into commercialization, startup, and big word nowadays, innovation. So that kind of in a nutshell gives you where we are. And of course, now we are aligned on a regional basis, and we're set up an independent, not-for-profit enterprise, but we are aligned very tightly with the Ontario government's innovation agenda for a lot of solid reasons. And I think in the future we will continue to evolve with consultation with government, but also to kind of respond to the needs of the Ontario economy the best that we can. Of course, our mandate is, I mean, it's a busy slide, but basically what it says is the key to OCE is utilization of the tremendous talent and resources that resides in academic institutions in order to bring talent, solution, technology, innovation to bear for the Ontario economy and connect by either direct connect through industry or something more indirect in terms of entrepreneurial startup opportunities. The bottom line is, how do you lever these fantastic resources that are out there for economic well-being? And that is the whole mission, mandate, and key to OCE. This chart shows you where we play in the innovation agenda. The problem with these charts is that that bar that's OCE there, it grows and grows, and it would be nice if you could contract it a bit, but unfortunately, in order to play in innovation, you need to be prepared to cover a very wide spread of gambit. And in order to turn the light bulb, which is the idea, into the dollar, which is commercialization, because successful commercialization, you hear that term, but there's only 2 ways to do it. 1, you generate revenue. 2, you save money somehow. That's it. That's economic impact. Something more interesting. Okay, let me spend a few moments on our programs, because it's always interesting to take a look at the OCE programs. So you've heard of this, the ministry calls what OCE runs the IACP, and it was referred to in my glorious introduction. Thank you, Narendra, for that. And so those programs represent what we're paid to do on behalf of the provincial government. And of course, collaborative is collaborative research that is traditional and you understood. It's industry partner or partners in collaboration with a college or a university for a project that will deliver some type of benefit value solution. The difference between what we would do and say an NSERC would be the OCE version of a collaborative scenario would be something which is a little bit more on the application side and a little bit less on the discovery side. So whereas an NSERC would have a requirement for like academic excellence, and we did have that, thus the name excellence and its history. And it's not that we don't want excellence to be in our research agenda, but the primary driver for us is economic benefit, is a specific benefit. It's not necessarily discovery, although these days it's kind of hard to differentiate. But not always does new discovery or new knowledge translate into short-term economic benefits. And I think that's the key, is we need to have impact in the shorter term. It's nice to be a little bit esoteric, and there are other organizations and funding agencies in this country that provide for that. But OCEs is more in the here and now. We're trying to make something happen now, either for an existing company or for a new startup. TPS is something very unique to OCE. It's evolved from various programs that we've had over time. It stands for technical problem solving. It's a shorter term. It's our volume program. This is what I would call our engagement program. So for targeted at SMEs, targeted at emerging enterprises, but still available to larger companies who have technical problems as a common theme that could be resolved by either a resource, a capability, a technology that's available at academic institution. Very difficult, even companies with endless resources cannot hire certain people because they won't leave the academic institution. Although these people are of tremendous value, and our job across the province is to try to let industry know what it is they need to help them solve a problem. Or they tell us, we go to them, and then with the breadth and reach of OCE, we can quickly identify a resource somewhere that can make a difference for them. And that's what we try to do. And sometimes we'll undertake several projects for an industrial partner in need of a solution in order for them to help their business strategy or their business plan or their markets or their technologies. So, and TPS is a volume program. It's a small dollar. It's a $25,000 with 25% cash matching in kind from the industrial partners, and we'll churn these out. And they're also a good way to lead to larger scale investments by companies to our academic institutions. Also kickstarts graduate students, and it takes advantage of full-time capabilities and really speaks to the evolving capacity within an academic institution to be able to respond. These days, they've improved exponentially in that capability. Our market readiness program is another thing that was actually invented, created by OCE way back as a advancement of intellectual properties originally generated inside an academic institution is to move them along what I would call the commercialization curve. So I'm not going to draw a curve, but if you saw a curve here, you'd start very similar to the chart that you saw where the dollar bill on one side and the idea on the other side. And you're trying to move that idea to that dollar bill. And it's a continuum, and it's not really linear either. It goes up and down and all over the place, and intellectual property goes back for further development or further exploratory, or you can make investments in the attempts to commercialize, and which could either be through an existing company or it can be through a whole new startup idea. So our market readiness covers multiple phases from conceptual and will this work in partnership with the academic institution all the way to a direct investment in a startup company. And then from there over into the marketplace, a lot of which you see out there. First job is our effort to get talent out of universities and into companies that need that talent pool. The target again is with emerging enterprises. And also this program is also designed to stop real bright people, graduates, from getting on a plane and heading to California, and trying to keep them here the best we can, working with our innovative and creative companies. The TTN is, spend less time on that because that's our academic-based program, but one thing you may or may not know is that OCE is involved in a multi-million-dollar support program that goes directly into our institutes or our colleges and universities to support technology transfer in the province of Ontario. It goes for people, it goes for projects. It's a large dollar investment that was originally direct from government to the universities, which now flows and is managed by OCE. It's another one of our key roles, and it's reflective somewhat with the agenda that you see here today, right from the mentorships right through to the show floor and all the stuff that's going on out there. So that component, that half, that's the IACP component, what OCE is contracted for. The stuff that says other is all the other stuff that we do. When I say stuff, it's monies and investments that have come to us from other sources. There's our special energy fund. There's our, which was large-scale energy-related projects. There's our experiential learning program, which is entrepreneurship. There's social innovation. You'll see social innovation on the floor, and there's an event at 2 o'clock, I believe, on social innovation this afternoon. There's our Center for Commercialization of Research was an NCE CCR commercialization funded initiative from the federal government, and really OCE's major partnership on commercialization with federal government. So that money comes separate, and it goes primarily into startup scenarios to try to commercialize research results, also consistent with all the other stuff we do. And our latest initiative, for those of you who were at the opening yesterday, you saw the IBM speak to the High Performance Computing Initiative. And if you weren't at the opening, this is a multi-million-dollar investment by IBM, Government of Canada, and the Government of Ontario, with a role for OCE to connect to this High Performance Computing Initiative. And again, if you don't know about it, it's very exciting for Canada because it's a major, major investment. And IBM picked Ontario for the location of its high performance computing initiative. So it's like $100 million going into this, and all sorts of things will come out of it. Our job is to try to connect industry to these opportunities that would lead to some kind of new innovation, new technologies by utilizing high performance computing. So these could be anything from drug discovery to unlocking secrets of the brain to advanced simulation techniques for manufacturing and things like finite analysis that requires incredible computing speed and time. So we're very excited about the initiative. I think it's good for Canada, it's good for Ontario. You'll be hearing more and more about it as whether it's in the newspapers or the press or TV or wherever as we go forward. That's the program offering. Okay, and of course, I already spoke to the objectives, the linkages and the environments for entrepreneurs and next generation of entrepreneurs and generating sustainable economic outcomes. And the key word there, sustainable, not just one-time hits, but sustainable. And what that means is jobs and revenue for the people of Ontario. This is a Smart Start program. These slides, I don't want to get into too much of this, but this will be our newest program, which will be announced, I believe, at Discovery shortly. So I'm not going to steal the thunder for this, but this is one of the FedDev programs to support direct investment in the creation of new startup companies. This complements our existing suite of programs that I talked to you about, in particular the market readiness programs. And these are the dates of the rollout. We plan to have about 20 or 30 of these out by the end of 2012. I kind of referred to it, but you can see, I mean, how we work. We don't do anything at OCE. You can tell by the floor here, the shop floor I'm calling it, because I'm hanging around too many companies these days. But you can tell by the show floor, really, that we do nothing alone at OCE. Everything we do is with partnerships. So that's the key to everything. Partnerships with academics, partnerships with companies, partnerships with other government, partnerships with people of interest. So this is what makes it all go. And you'll see when we talk about our programs and other programs and our entire staff of business development officers, which I'll show you in a minute, work with all of these partners on the far right-hand side of this screen in order to deliver innovation to the province. So we at OCE consider ourselves just part of the infrastructure and like a connect, a glue. And one of the things that makes us unique, in fact, is our business development force. So a lot of people say, well, are you just a building, an office with some? No, we're actually, these people that you see in this chart are all in the field. These people are available to talk to companies, to talk to academics, to provide advice, to provide counsel, to connect not just to our programs, but programs of all of our partner organizations across the province. So there you go. I'm going to, I just show you some of our partner companies, because what's interesting is that a lot of times people don't think that they expect to see a lot of names of startups, and you will see a lot of startups, but you'll see a lot of companies that here and different technology areas that we're working on. And we do in a wide variety of things that you wouldn't expect to see some of these companies here, but we expect to do some real exciting projects with this. And I always like to highlight, my personal favorite is the Pernod Ricard, which is, those of you know, that's the largest owner of distilleries in the globe. And our project there has to do with developing an artificial sniffer to help sense aroma during the distillation process, which is very important part of it. So it's a technology, it's a project at University of Guelph. And we're very excited to have partners like that to use in the distillery business and help me with some of my favorite beverages. Other than that, but anyway. And of course, each one of these is a pending success story of tremendous, huge opportunity. So there's not a name on, these are all new startups. I'm just gonna, before I make a statement, I'm gonna have a quick look at this. These are all startups within the past 24 months. And some you may have heard of, some are on the shop floor, some aren't. Shop floor, there I go again. Some are on the show floor, some are not. And all of these have potential to be $100 million companies. And that makes me really excited. And hopefully I've been able to share some of that excitement with you. And we are welcome to talk to anybody from OCE, either anybody with a black shirt or anybody with a suit. If you can find us. And we're more than happy to talk and answer questions. And if you want, you can connect with us in any other shape or form. And thanks for your time. And enjoy the show. And we're here for you. And thank you for being part of it. And I'm not taking any questions at all. No, I'm just kidding. Did anybody have a burning question? I'm around. You can talk to me. I'm going to go stand back there and wait for people to come and ask me questions if you're interested. Okay. Thanks a lot. Great.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning. Welcome back to the Discovery Innovation Partners Theatre. I'm Narendra Dahal, VP Finance and Administration for the Ontario Centres of Excellence. Our next presentation this morning will be from the Mars Discovery District, Amy Sergis. Amy is the Director of the Business Accelerator Program at Mars, or Business Accelerator Program Network at Mars. She will speak to you about BAP, which provides a suite of services and programs to Ontario's high-potential technology companies and entrepreneurs. If you have any questions, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of time at the end to ask those. Please welcome Amy Sergis.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm here to talk to you about the Business Acceleration Program at Mars. BAP is a partner program. So the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation has contracted us to work in partnership across a network of 14 organizations in the province called Regional Innovation Centres. So we're part of two foundational programs. So Bob just told you about IACP as an initiative that OCE takes on, and we're the business support side. So we operate a little bit differently, and we operate through a suite of channel partners called Regional Innovation Centres, and there's 14 of them. I actually refer to it as 17 because there's a Northern Alliance of 4 organizations. So we're sort of the background support, and really this is our front face into the community. And you'll notice Mars on there. Mars itself is our Toronto-based Regional Innovation Centre as well. So we have a separate team in the organization that works directly with clients. So we're a suite of programs and services delivered through this network to strengthen and accelerate the growth of Ontario's tech entrepreneurs. And basically what it boils down to is providing early-stage entrepreneurs with the tools they need to help them build their technology business wherever they are in the province. We're a connected network of advisors as well, and support services. So we're working in collaboration across the province. And this is really the key area, which is our sweet spot from that concept to growth period. So all the tools are designed to fit into advancing companies at that stage. So these are the people on the street, and these are the services that you can access at your Regional Innovation Centre. So we provide local resources and support at the centres, from entrepreneurs and residents to analysts who are crack team of people who can work with you through your issues and challenges as you start up, as well as some introductory education programs, outreach events, volunteer mentor networks to help accelerate your early stage company, as well as set up peer-to-peer groups and access to service providers. But we do some stuff centrally as well that we work through the RICs to deliver. So we have a team in-house that delivers market intelligence. We have an education team in-house that develops online tools and templates and workbooks, as well as travels around the province delivering workshops. And I'll go into that a little bit more. We also run some competitive funding programs with some minimal dollars. And these are small project funding for 3 to 4 month projects to really get that company past a business hurdle. But I'll talk to you a little bit more about our market intelligence services. We provide secondary market research at no cost to the entrepreneur. We have a team of about 10 analysts on staff with expertise in broad technology sectors from IT, digital media, clean tech, and life sciences and healthcare. So we really have all those areas of growth covered. And we also take on a lot of initiatives from an insight and education perspective, carrying out white papers and that sort of thing. So how that works is everything we do is managed through our RIC partners. So everything we do is managed service. So you engage with a regional innovation center, and they broker the inquiry with our team in-house. And it's a pretty quick process, and it can be anything from a really basic question to some deeper dive information. We also have a staff of information specialists on staff, so we have pretty much the public and the private sector covered. I also wanted to highlight a new initiative that we took on called Startup Library. And Startup Library is a really cool portal of information that's out in the public domain, but you really don't have time as an entrepreneur to go and search for it. So we have a very robust, delicious bookmark page, as well as some tailored resources for startups at different stages of development or in different sectors that we're building out right now. We also have taken on the Entrepreneur's Toolkit, and that's really an online resource as well as our education workshops that really go down to the basics of how to get started, how to find your resources quickly. So this is what it looks like. You can search by topic, as well as drill down to really just the nuts and bolts. And this is all designed and written for entrepreneurs who don't have a lot of time. So it's really focused on that sweet spot. We also carry out a course called Entrepreneurship 101, and that's set up as an online course that goes through 26 sessions on the basic nuts and bolts of starting your business, as well as a suite of videos and live content. These workbooks I find are incredibly helpful. Again, getting down to the basics of building out your business plan, building a pitch deck, building your forecasts, all those things you need, as well as some funding sources, because everybody needs money. For our workshop series, we've developed 4 series right now that focus on really those areas that folks I find really need a lot of help. So marketing communications, that's often overlooked, the B2B sales process, pitching to investors, and strategy fundamentals. And really the whole point of this is working with our facilitators who are experienced business people, and they're really coming out with, you're busy people. Spending 2 hours, 3 hours out of your day is better have a great outcome. So these are designed to have actionable products when you come out of them. So you're walking out with your value proposition or your pitch deck and ready to jump into something else. So entrepreneurs can participate in these workshop series at the regional innovation centers. We travel around the province to deliver that. And to get engaged in any of these resources, you just visit your local RIC, and they'll introduce you to everything that we offer. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions? Hi. We are not for profit. We are registered as a charitable organization, and Mars was developed as a private-public partnership. So it was private investment that kicked off the organization, and it's been supplemented over time with government funds. This program specifically is we're on contract with the government. We're a separate team in-house to deliver this program on behalf of the government. No, we operate through ONE and we support the ONE. So there's two fundamental platforms that support this Ontario Network of Excellence. And one is the Industry Academic Collaborative Partnerships that OCE runs and Bob just spoke of. And the other side is the business mentorship side. We just operate through a different mechanism in working in partnership. The regional innovation centers are business development people in the community, whereas with OCE, they have staff that are in the community. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Well, I'm wearing a very bright shirt today, so I'll be around at any point in time and take your questions. Thanks.
I'm Narendra Hall, VP Finance Administration for the Ontario Centers of Excellence. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our next Innovation Partners presentation this morning from the Networks of Centers of Excellence. You know them as NCE. Speaking this morning is Lisa Drouillard, Acting Associate Vice President, NCE. The Networks of Centers of Excellence foster multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral partnerships between academia, industry, government, and not-for-profit organizations. It supports academic research, the commercialization of products and ideas, and the development of significant Canadian businesses. Significant Canadian business advantages. If you have any questions, there should be time at the end of the presentation for that. Please welcome Lisa Drouillard.
And thank you very much for sticking around for this last presentation of the morning's panel. I'm Lisa Drouillard from the NCE Secretariat, which is the federal granting program responsible for networked research and commercialization of research. Let me just click through. The presentation I'm going to give this morning will walk through the mandate of the NCE, a rough idea of how we are governed. It's a fairly complex governance structure, the programs that we offer, and I'll spend a little bit more time on describing to you the networks and centers we fund. Many people on this conference floor won't know of us as the NCE Secretariat, but many people are familiar with the networks and centers that we fund. I'll give a brief overview of the impacts of the program and the process for evaluating and choosing the networks and centers that we fund. So the mandate of the NCE is to mobilize Canada's research talent in the academic, private, and public sectors and to apply it to the task of developing the economy and improving the quality of life for Canadians. We've been around almost as long as the OCE, but not quite. The NCE was established in 1989. We've been around 22 years. And it was interesting to see the use of the graph earlier in Luke's presentation this morning that showed the valley of death in the commercialization cycle. Most of our programs also do fall somewhere within that spectrum, but sometimes it's all too easy to try and place them neatly along that spectrum in a way that doesn't quite reflect the breadth of the networks and centers that we fund. So how do we achieve this mandate? Well, we work to stimulate leading-edge research in areas of importance to Canada. Our current priorities are set by the federal S&T strategy priority areas of science. We build national and international partnerships, work to develop and retain world-class research and research translation capabilities, including significant initiatives to train highly qualified people. We create innovative knowledge transfer opportunities and mechanisms, both within the NCE Classic program as well as within the Centers of Excellence for Commercialization and Research. And we provide the capacity and adjudicate the competitions, very mindful of the need to develop management talent in the development of business plans for significant networked research and commercialization initiatives. So this very complex slide about our governance does give you a very good sense of the interdisciplinarity of the networks and centers we fund. You'll see represented here a place in our governance structure for all three federal granting councils, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, and then also the federal departments that lead those portfolios, so Industry Canada and Health Canada. All those parties are all represented on the NCE steering committee that takes the final decisions about what gets funded within our programs. And a key element here is we're a small secretariat of some 20 staff, but given the size and the scale of the networks and centers that we fund, our secretariat sits as ex officio members on the boards of all of the networks and centers we fund. So that gives us a very good hands-on sense of the progress of our centers and also allows us to navigate the any questions around eligible expenses and appropriate activities, particularly in our newer programs where they're very cutting edge in terms of the types of activities that they're taking on, very different from normal research activities. So here's our suite of programs. The NCE Classic program, as we call it, has been around for some 22 years, as I mentioned. In terms of, again, the reference to some of the Ontario programs, this is going to be more what our Ontario colleagues would put in the IACP type suite of initiatives. These are national research networks with a significantly long-term mandate and significant funding. I'll go through each of the programs in particular, but these networks can be funded for up to 15 years. The Centers of Excellence for Commercialization and Research is a newer program, was established as part of the federal S&T strategy in 2007, as was the business-led NCEs, which was just made permanent in the last budget, in Budget 2012, as well as the Industrial R&D Internship Program. So the NCE Classic program funds large-scale, academically led virtual research networks that bring together partners from academia, industry, government, and not-for-profit. In the context of our current suite, people do then often think that NCE supports more basic research. Sometimes that's the case, but on this conference floor in the last couple of days, I get approached by all kinds of people who've worked with NCEs in the past that have been instrumental to spinning out successful firms and work very much on the applied science, and science that is responsive to the needs of end users is critical to all of the networks that we fund. They're typically hosted by an academic institution. They, like all of the other networks and centers that we fund, are federally incorporated not-for-profits before they take receipt of our funds. They typically support some 15 to 25 projects at any given time, working with some 50 to 100 professors across a large range of universities working in a key priority area. They help to train and support between 100 and 200 highly qualified people per network, and work with some 50, an average of some 50 partner organizations. So seeing a very long and engaged list of partners in the application process is really critical to success in the NCE. And these centers have a budget typically of some $3 to $6 million a year. So currently, these are the networks that we fund. You'll be familiar with a good number of them. Many of them are in the news routinely, such as ArcticNet, whose scientific director just took in a major Lifetime Achievement Award at the recent International Polar Year Conference. Stem Cell Network in the health domain. Allergen has just been renewed in its funding for another 7 years. And we did host a competition last year, but we are just waiting to be able to announce the names of the most recent cohort of NCEs. We're hoping that'll be announced in the next couple of weeks. And in the last couple of years, we did make permanent a program for knowledge mobilization within the NCE. It's a much smaller program, provides a smaller budget, more along the lines of $500,000 over 5 years, that focuses on the translation of research only. We don't fund the research itself within those KM networks. Within those we have TRAC, which is Translating Emergency Knowledge for Kids, Children and Youth in Challenging Contexts, and PrevNet, which is a network that's focused on bullying. So you see there also a real opportunity that in this new program where we engage the social sciences in the translation of research to a much more effective way. The Centers of Excellence for Commercialization and Research program is very near and dear to my heart. That's the program I run when I'm not acting in the AVP position. Was established in 2007 out of the S&T strategy, and it is a mechanism designed to support the operation of research and commercialization centers to bring together people, services, research infrastructure to position Canada at the forefront of breakthrough innovations in priority areas of science. Critical distinction between the CSERs and the NCEs. The CSER program does not fund research at all. The eligible expenses are there to fund only the operating costs of these centers and the commercialization costs associated with the mandates of each of these centers. And it is also a matching program, whereas the NCE does attract a lot of leveraged investments. It's not a mandate, it's not a condition of funding, whereas it is for the other programs in the suite that I'll walk through. So for the CSERs, we pay only 75% of the operating costs of these centers and only 50% of the commercialization costs. And this program, as well as the next couple that I'll mention, are adjudicated by a private sector advisory board, whereas in the NCE there's a standing selection committee of very experienced academics and scientists. So we have currently 22 CSERs in our cohort. There was a very large cohort the first year with a $145 million budget for that first round, now with an ongoing budget of $30 million a year that supports smaller groups of CSERs that we've funded over the last 5 years. And by and large, these centers are focused on advancing commercialization in particular technology areas, but that might not be your experience if you're familiar with the CSERs that are based here in Toronto. So you'll note that both Mars Innovation and CCR, which support respectively the commercialization of research coming out of the Discovery District and coming out of the OCEs, they're multi-sectoral and work to provide business supports, investments in startup companies, IP support and managerial expertise for all of the research coming out of their member institutions. Pretty much all of the other CSERs in our program are directed to commercializing technology disclosures from a particular area of science. The business-led NCE program was made permanent in this last budget, and it was a pilot in 2008 with the goal of funding large-scale collaborative research networks to support the needs of the private sector. So it's important to note people often then confuse the mandates of the business-leds with the CSERs, but the business-leds are, at the end of the day, research networks, but rather than having an academic proponent come forward and put forward the plan for what the network will do, has to be a business focus. So it's a consortium of companies that come together to apply to the program. So they're led by the private sector that come together in a not-for-profit. And here we have a 50% leveraging requirement, and these competitions are also adjudicated by the PSAP. So here are the 4 that we funded in 2008, and there is also a focus on the key areas of the key technology sectors spelled out in the federal S&T strategy. So we have 2 in natural resources and energy, 1 in environmental science, although this one Garden focuses very much on the environmental applications in the aerospace sector, and drug discovery, the Quebec Consortium for Drug Discovery, CQDM, advances our health and life sciences technology area. Last and the smallest program in our suite is IRDI, the Industrial R&D Internship Programs. These are programs that support placing graduate students and postdocs into the private sector, both to give them an opportunity to do R&D in the private sector and also to address technology needs and encourage an investment in R&D within the private sector. Again, there is a matching requirement for this program, and the goal of that program is to fund 1,000 interns a year, but there was also additional funds in this year's budget for IRDI, so we're expecting that number of interns to double within the coming year. So the review process, I won't go into very deeply, only to say that it's highly competitive. The success rate is quite low, given the focus on excellence within our programs. With the NCE Secretariat, it's adjudicated both by expert review panels that are brought together from around the world to review the excellence of the science, and then ranked by a standing selection committee. Very similar process with CSER and business-led NCE, only the adjudication after the expert review takes place in the context of our PSAP. So here's an overview of the Private Sector Advisory Board. Our chair is here in Toronto, Nancy Hughes-Anthony, who's the former chair of the Canadian Bankers Association. And here's a good sense of all of the different types of firms and technology areas that whose expertise we can draw upon within that PSAP. Now, I've got a couple of documents that I'd be happy to share with you over at our booth, which is just over in 300, that talk about the impacts of the program. This is an insert that we just had in Research Money about 6 weeks ago that talks about all of the impacts of our full suite of programs. One of the key successes over the last year was that we've seen a really significant increase in the number of partners, both private and public sector, with our networks and centers. We've gone up to over 3,000 partners and almost 1,500 industry partners, which is a significant increase over previous years. And we are also really collecting a very significant portfolio now of technologies and disclosures that have come through these networks and centers that are generating real impacts on the patent portfolio and the licenses of these centers. But there's lots more examples of individual success stories in here, but also I'll point you to the report of our Private Sector Advisory Board from last year. This both gives a very in-depth overview of all of the networks and centers that we've funded through the CSER and business-led programs in particular was their focus, but also will give you, through their recommendations, a very good sense of where the program is going, which will be a very strong focus on helping these centers develop strong business plans and also to focus their work on their own sustainability such that they can live on beyond the grant period of our program. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Unless there are any questions. Yes, you're correct in noting that we funded the first centers almost 5 years ago, and so those funding agreements will come to a close the end of this year. We are waiting for authorities on what to do next. We need to amend our terms and conditions in order to have a follow-on competition for those centers. But we are working very closely with the centers in advance of any competition framework being made public to give them guidance on how to prepare the kinds of business plans that the PSAB is going to be expecting in the event that we get approval on our T's and C's to come back. So we're hoping for news on that any day, frankly. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. And as Lisa said, it's booth number 300, you said? In the 300 alley. If you have any further questions. That ends this morning's presentations. I hope you've enjoyed them and have gained valuable information about these organizations that are truly helping innovation and advance across Ontario. Please make your way now to Hall F for the Discovery Luncheon and the award ceremony. Innovation partner presentations will resume again at 2 o'clock this afternoon in this theater. Thank you.